So welcome everyone. We are really excited to have you here. I'm Zoe, co-founder and CEO here at Common Trust. Just a quick intro on us. We help business owners transitioning into employee ownership. So we support with business owners doing everything from planning an exit strategy to executing a successful sale process to growing an employee-owned company. We've worked with businesses as small as 10 employees. We've worked with businesses with tens of thousands of employees. So this is really a model that can fit a wide array of companies. So regardless of where you are in the process, exploring, designing, or implementing your process, we are here to support business owners in that process. Before we get started, I just want to share some context about today's session with Miren. Owner Sessions is a series that we have developed that's dedicated to sharing the stories of leaders who have or are in the midst of transitioning to an employee-owned company. This is really designed to allow each of you who are going down this path to hear directly from a business owner who's walked the walk. It's one thing to hear from folks who have studied employee ownership or worked on a lot of employee ownership transitions, but it's a totally different picture to hear from a business owner who's actually done the process and is running an employee-owned company. So that's what we're here for today. Today, I'm so excited to be here with Miren Oca, founder and CEO of Ocaquatics Swim School. Miren, I want to say we've known each other for 3 years now at this point.
I think so. Yeah.
At least a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Miren's here to share more about her company's transition to employee ownership and more importantly, what that's meant for her team. So we're going to talk a little bit about how it's opened up new opportunities for employees to build wealth, to invest in their families and contribute to their community and what it means for the company. So for today, I'm going to kick us off with a set of prepared questions, but I would say feel free to drop any of your own into the chat. We'll be monitoring those throughout. And so we'll do our best to answer those both as we go, and then we'll also save some time to answer those questions at the end of the session. All right, so let's kick us off. Miren, let's start with a bit about Ocaquatics. You've been in the business, running the business for 30 years now. Tell us how the business began and what you guys do today.
Well, actually, it's been it's almost 32 years. And
Okay.
the business, I didn't start out wanting to have a business. I started my business in college out of necessity. I was a student at Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. I was getting my degree in biochemistry, and I was going to go to medical school and be an orthopedic surgeon. Like, that was my life. And I found myself pregnant at the age of 19. And I thought, I need to do something. I did finish my degree, but I didn't want to go to med school with a toddler. When I graduated, my son was 18 months old. And I thought, I'll go to med school later, but let me start this little side business. Let me do something to make some money and survive, basically. And so I started teaching swimming lessons because it's what I knew how to do. And I really loved it. I jumped into this world of entrepreneurship. I had watched my parents have a business. They had a restaurant. They are both immigrants, and they had moved to the US and ended up in Louisiana, and they had a restaurant. And I watched them work 24/7, and it was hard. And I thought, there's no way I will ever do a business. And now I found myself there. So I really wanted to do business differently. And I read a lot. I learned a lot. I kept working on it. And as my business started to grow, I really liked it. And I really liked working with people. I really liked hiring people. I really loved teaching swimming. It was great. And, little by little, over the last 3 decades, the business has grown. And we now have, over 100 in high season, we'll teach 6,500 swimming lessons per week. And
Wow.
about 165 team members high season. And I've never gone to med school. It's just been this really great journey of building this business, but building it in a little bit of a different way. So I'm really, really happy with the business and with the culture and with everything that we have around Ocaquatics.
Yeah, so that's actually one thing I'd love to double click on. One thing that has always impressed me about you and how you lead this business is it's not just about the service you guys provide teaching swimming, it's also about personal growth. Tell us a bit about what that means to you and how that's guided Ocaquatics culture over the years.
Sure. Well, we do life-saving work. So the children, Unfortunately, drowning is the leading cause of death in children ages 1 to 14 in the county that I'm in Miami-Dade County. So, but the National Institutes of Health have researched and reported that children who participate in formal swimming lessons are 88% less likely to be involved in a drowning. That's huge. So by doing swimming lessons and by doing the work that we do, we're saving lives. And we talk about that with our team members. So they feel that the work they do matters. But in addition to that, we have a second part of our mission that we really focus on our team members' growth, because they come to us so young and we want them to grow while they're with us under this framework of environmental and social responsibility so that we can grow the business in a sustainable way and make a bigger impact in the world. And so we believe in personal development, leadership development, and personal financial literacy, and all those things that'll help them in their lives. And hopefully many will stay with us, but we know that not everybody's going to stay with us. And we're kind of building the citizens of the world, so we really want to help them while they're here and have them learn as much as they can while they're here. So that's a big part of our purpose.
Yeah, I love that perspective of using a company as a way to build citizens of the world. I think that's a really unique way of framing what work can be.
Yes.
Okay, so 32 years into this, let's talk about what led you to explore employee ownership. What did you consider? When did selling the business come onto your radar? And what did you look at?
Well, we were first, we're doing this business thing. We're kind of growing. Everything's going really well. We're pretty successful. We're doing really well. And we were first approached by private equity in June of 2014. And I didn't even know. I met with 3 gentlemen. I didn't even know what PE meant. I didn't have shoes on for the meeting when they met me at the pool. And I started getting approached by people. And I thought, gosh, it's really interesting that somebody wants to buy the business. And I started watching what they were doing with our industry. There was a lot of roll up of children's activities in around the country, and I started just observing. But I also talked to my son, the person who had changed the trajectory of my life. I talked to him, and he had worked in the business for 14 years, and he had chlorine in his blood. He was really amazing at the business, but he didn't want to run mom's business. He wanted to do his own thing. So, when he told me he didn't want the business, that was like, oh, kind of soul crushing. I was like, of course you want this. But so it really started helping me think through, okay, who do I want to run this business? And I decided I wanted the people who were most passionate about it. And it was our employees. And so I started looking at how can I sell it to them? And I kind of looked at DIY, I was going to sell to a small group of people, or I looked at everything. And I found worker cooperatives, which were really interesting. And I kind of researched that for a bit. And then I found the ESOP model, the employee stock ownership plan. And I thought that's really intriguing. And I thought, let me go down that road. And I did. I really liked what I was seeing, except that it was pretty cumbersome. And rightfully so. It's a retirement benefit plan. So it has to be overseen by the Department of Labor and ERISA. And I'm looking at all of this and I thought, gosh, this is going to be quite a huge undertaking. It's expensive and there's going to be a yearly valuation every year. So this is going to be a big financial lift for the company. And I hired an attorney. I did a valuation and a feasibility study. And my attorney actually had a podcast and I was listening to his podcast. And one day he interviewed someone who does EOT transactions. And I thought, wait a minute, that sounds more like what I want. And so I listened to that podcast. I started thinking about it. And then I went to a conference the very next week and I met you. So it was really funny. I thought the stars were in alignment. And you also introduced me to Mud Bay, Lars at Mud Bay. I spoke to him. He had an ESOP and he was, we were talking, we have similar type of demographic of team members. And we were just talking about what it would mean. And he really helped me to see that an EOT might be a better fit. And after that, I just pivoted and went down that road. And really the EOT has checked all the boxes for me and for what we wanted. One of the main things that I was concerned about with an ESOP, we are a certified B Corporation. We are members of 1% for the Planet, which means we give away 1% of our gross annual revenues to environmental causes, nonprofits. We're conscious capitalism members, all this fluffy stuff. And I I really thought I wanted to protect all of that. I wanted to protect the purpose and the mission. And I found out that an ESOP could be sold. The trustee was the fiduciary and could sell the company down the line. And I really didn't want that to happen. And when I found out that the EOT could protect the purpose, that was really, really the box that I checked, that I thought, yes, this is the right move for us. So so far, I mean, we've been in it now like 20 months, and it's going really well. And I'm super happy with having found that EOT model. After 2 years of research and going down that ESOP road, finding the EOT and moving that way, it was perfect timing.
Well, so tell us a little bit more about what those boxes were when you say you talked to Lars and the EOT
Hmm.
really checked all the boxes. It
Hmm.
sounds like one of those was protecting the purpose,
Yes.
maybe protecting that kind of independence of the business as opposed to getting sold. What were the
Hmm.
other boxes that you were looking to get checked?
I really, our team members we don't have a lot of people who are traditionally educated. And so, but we've done a leadership book club, and we have a pretty cool leadership academy, is what we call it. And we do a lot of education. And I really wanted something that they could be part of it. They could be part of the governance structure. They could be part of helping to make decisions. And I also wanted to continue to educate them. So before we did anything, for years before we did anything, we did a lot of education on personal financial literacy. We did a lot of education on open book management, and how we could share our financials with our team members. And I saw that it was a game changer for how our team members really felt about their role. And we weren't employee owned at that point, and they were taking ownership. And so we really developed this culture of ownership. And I really liked that we could continue that with the EOT. I like that, I could write anything I wanted into the trust. I could put in there that I really wanted it to strive to maintain B Corp certification and our 1% for the Planet partnerships. I felt that it was just a lot more flexible in what I could do, because the trust is wonderful and flexible, almost to a fault. You can put anything into the trust, and you really have to think through, what do I want this to look like? In Florida, it's 1,000-year trust. So, I don't know what this is going to look like in a couple of 100 years, but it was just really interesting to think through what that looked like. So I also loved the no repurchase obligations at the end.
Hmm.
So if a team member was working with us and was a co-owner, we call our team members co-owners, and then they decided to leave, I didn't have to repurchase, I didn't have to buy their stock back, like as in an ESOP. With the ESOP, I'd have to have an account flush with cash to be ready for those repurchase obligations. With the EOT, we just paid them their amount of profit until the day that they left. That's what we decided to do. So that was pretty significant of a decision. And then also, a lot of people, when they first heard about the EOT, they thought I was gifting the company away. And it's not. I had a really healthy exit, and I did very well. And I think that that is a misconception. A lot of people think that you're giving this away. So I'm pretty happy the way everything turned out in that regard as well.
Yeah, we actually hear that question, that myth quite a bit, that it
Mhm.
requires you to gift the company, which is not at all the case in these employee ownership transitions. You know, one of the things that I'd love to hear you reflect on, oftentimes when we have business owners come to us, they think about employee ownership as a sales strategy, something that's like to provide liquidity and a succession strategy for the founder.
Mhm.
Part of what I've heard from you is it's so much more than that, because there's a real human element and impact to that. Sharing equity, sharing opportunity with your team. Tell us what employee ownership as an opportunity for your people means to you.
Well, there are a couple of things, because, some people say, what changed when you did this transaction? And we say everything and nothing, because everything changed with the ownership structure, but nothing with the management structure. We're still running the company the same way. We still have our management structure in place. We can still make decisions the way we did before, but we had a lot of transparency with our team, and we had them help us make decisions beforehand. So I think now, we really have been able to help our team members feel like owners. We had that culture of ownership before, but now they own it. They really feel like it, and it's really leveled up how they show up at work every day. And I think that, this has given them a sense of pride in the work that they do. And also it's helped them recruit people to come and work with us. It's helped them see, be really out there marketing for us, out there talking about us. I mean, they're the best marketing department we ever have, so, and it's just been really, really great all along those lines. There was one thing that we were talking about earlier about the ESOP and why the EOT was one of the boxes that checked. It's so simple. It's such a cleaner and simpler model rather than, a co-op or an ESOP. So that has been really helpful for us to be able to explain it to our team members, to be able to have them really understand what it is. We've also put a lot of education in place to help them because we want them to understand it. We want them to be able to talk about this out there. But I really do think that it is a lot cleaner. It's a lot simpler. And, for us, that was a really good thing.
So tell us a little bit about that simplicity and what makes it easier for your team to understand. When you say it's so simple, what does that actually mean?
Well, before when I was looking at the ESOP, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have to talk to them about stock and the shares of stock. And every year they're going to get a piece of paper that explains to them what's in their account. And instead, right now, at the end of the year, it's a profit share. So we have our profit waterfall. We have this much profit at the end of the year. Part of it goes into a capital, like a reserves account. We have set that in the trust. Part of it goes into a capital expenditure account that we've set in the trust. And then the rest gets distributed with the co-owners. And it's much cleaner and simpler. It's very transparent. We've chosen to give them half in a check, and then we put the other half in their 401k. So, that's been a really, really simple to understand. The other thing is, we announced on March 3rd, 2024 about the transaction. We had done it on March 1st. And we had a big event. We brought everybody together, and nobody knew about this except for a bookkeeper, our financial manager, our operations person. But when we got together to discuss this at a meal, we told them that private equity had been looking at us and had wanted to buy what we had built, and we had decided to sell the company. And it was like, oh, what do you mean, But then we explained to them how we sold it to them and how we sold it to a trust, and they are the beneficiaries of the trust. And we talked about liability because that was a big concern. What about liability? So we talked about the trust protects them from liability. And we talked a lot about that evening. We gave them, showed them what this would mean. Of course, I mean, I've shared this story before. Many people were like, well, how much are we going to make? How much are we going to make? And the first year I told them it's not much because we had to do the transaction in this year. And they still wanted an amount. So I told them $17. They would each make $17 in December as their profit share. And I was prepared to pay everybody $17 if I had to. But at the end of the year, they actually made about 4% of their income. And so that was significant. That was a nice surprise. And this year is looking even healthier and really, really better. But the most important thing for us is we did that meal, we announced. The next day, we had a lunch and learn on what this meant. Anybody could attend. The next week, we had a webinar so anyone can attend. And then we continued to have AMAs, Ask Miren Anything. And they were virtual, and people could attend, and they could bring their family members or their friends because people were asking them questions and they didn't know how to answer. And it's really, 2 years ago, it was hard to Google EOT and get information. Now I see a lot more activity about EOTs, but before it was pretty hard to understand what it was. And so we did a lot of education and a lot of financial education and projecting out what this looked like and what it looked like now and what it looked like when the note was paid off and all sorts of things so that they could see what this really does mean for them. And every session that we do, you see more and more excitement and more understanding. And it's been great.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of the stories you told me about these AMA sessions, Ask Miren Anything, where I think you said you were presenting on this to the employees and kept seeing someone point off screen or ask someone something off screen, and it
Yes.
turned out they were getting questions for their family members. Is that
Yes.
right?
And then it's just like, just bring them. Come on, it's okay. Anybody's welcome. So yes, you're absolutely right. They kind of started to understand it, but then when a family member or a friend would ask them a question, they didn't know how to respond. And rightfully so. This is a new model. And so yes, I just started saying anybody can come. Because I want people out there talking about it. I think it would be great if, it's a great it's a great recruiting tool, it's a great retention tool, but it's also, I want to be a messenger about employee ownership, and I want to get this word out there because I do think it's so great for people.
Yeah, and I think it's a great example of the fact that employee ownership doesn't just impact the employees, it impacts their families. So
Hmm.
including them in this process so their families understand what kind of opportunity this means to them,
Hmm.
is so important. Another thing you've told me about just how you have led the company over the years is you started to build up financial literacy with your team
Hmm.
prior to this transition. Tell us a little bit about what that looked like and then how you think that may have supported going through this transition so folks really were able to understand what this would mean.
So, one of the things for me, why it was so important to me is I was one of those college students doing my little business, and I was $60,000 in debt. Because I was a single parent. I was putting my housing expenses on credit cards. Like, it was tough. It was very, very tough. And when I think back to those moments, I do remember one day I used to write those credit card checks, for housing expenses and anything I had to. And it was just it's not a sustainable way to live. And I remember one day going on a walk and saying, if I can just get out of this, I will help others not feel what I feel, because financial insecurity it's a horrible feeling. And so I'm really happy that we did keep that promise. And, we've done financial literacy for about 15 years. We started out with a couple of great programs that we found out there in the marketplace, and now there are more and more and more. There's so many interesting financial literacy education programs that you can do. Some are free. You can make donations to the Khan Academy and get these free courses, and they're really good. We use YNAB. You need a budget. That's a really good one as well. We've used Smart Dollar. We've used so many different programs with our team, and but I did that because I had suffered through that. And now we have amazing stories of success. And that's the thing, is like last week or 2 weeks ago, someone called me, one of our managers called me, and she was in her home. She just called me on a Sunday afternoon. I thought, what's going on? So I picked up the phone. She's like, I just want you to know we're looking at a house right now. We're in the house and we're putting the offer down. We could never have done this without the financial education that we learned at Ocaquatics. Like, that's awesome. That's why I did that. But it also, I mean, it was great for people. It's great for them, but it was great for the business, because once they got this confidence in their personal financial literacy, we could introduce them to business concepts. We could teach them about financial statements. We could teach them about how expenses work in a business. And that's been a game changer, because now they look for the numbers. They want to know, they're hungry to learn more. And when they're hungry to learn about how the business works, it's amazing for the business. It really does help us. They're always thinking about ways for improvements. And they did that before we were employee owned, or before they knew we were becoming employee owned. And so now it's even ramped up. And it's been great. We talk about it all the time. And it's just one of those things that helps them, helps the business too.
So tell us a little bit about the impact you've seen from this, because I mean, what's clear to me is that you kind of already started down this path culturally way ahead of
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
and the legal structure and the transaction really solidified that at the legal structure side of things. But like, tell us what this has meant for employees since your transition 2 years ago.
Well, it's funny because, last year we wrote a pretty aggressive forecast before they knew about, employee ownership, and they are part of forecasting and budgeting. They help us with that. And we wrote a pretty aggressive budget, and we weren't hitting it. We were not hitting our top line revenue, but we hit it, especially once they learned that they were employee owners. they managed expenses like crazy. I mean, there were times we had to say, okay, you don't have to go that, that much, but they were looking at every single thing and they were really evaluating how we were spending our dollars, especially they put on an owner hat. And again, these are people that they're not traditionally educated. They don't have degrees in financial, accounting or any of that, but they were thinking and they were doing I now go into our financial meetings every month and I hear team members talking about financials better than most business owners that I know. And I know a lot of business owners that are not comfortable with their financials. And now all of our managers can read financials like, they understand the story because financials do tell a story. And that's what we've been trying to teach them is what is the story that the numbers are teaching you? And following those trends and thinking through what does this mean? And so that's been really great. I have a nonprofit. I actually wear my t-shirt today, Ripples of Impact, and it's ROI. And it's redefining ROI for business. It's not just the return on the investment, but it's the ripples of impact that you create by the choices that you make. I think this has been one of those choices that I made early on that has really created some ripples because it's helped them with buying homes, sending kids to school, doing all sorts of things. But it's also been really great for the business too. So I think this is one of those, really positive and, ripples that has paid off.
It's funny. I know ripples of impact because of you, and I have never noticed the ROI
Yeah.
acronym before, which I love.
Well, I have a pebble on my desk. I keep all, here in at work. And it's because your pebbles are your decisions. All the decisions you make start a ripple. So what kind of pebble are you going to drop? And it's silly, but it's something that helps you think, okay, what kind of decision am I making? I got to think, I have to be more intentional about it. What kind of ripple do I want to create? And yeah, I've really been talking about that. And I think that, we've done all of this. We've done the B Corp. We've done all of these things. And it's an investment, but I think the ripples and the dividends have paid off. I mean, I think that this is far, it's just been bigger than any investment or anything we've put into it. So yeah.
So I guess with that in mind, for business owners who are considering employee ownership, what is one thing that you wish they knew about the human impact of employee ownership? We talk a lot about kind of the performance benefits that come from it, but tell us about the human side. What do you wish people knew?
Well, it's such a source of pride. People are what we've been able to do for our team members at Ocaquatics, they might never have this opportunity to be a business owner. So now they're so proud to have this title as a co-owner. And now it means some extra income in a community like Miami, where it's very expensive to live here. This gives them extra income. It gives them more. It gives them, when this note is paid off, this is going to be really huge for them. And so it helps to close that wealth gap a little bit where they're able to buy homes, where they're able to send kids to school, their children to school. I think that, they feel trust. And that's been one of the biggest things is they feel like, I think they felt it before, but this again, now really formalizes that sense of trust that we trust them to come to us, to talk to us. How do you feel? How are things going? And we've always had really great, if we did a net promoter score or a survey to our team, they've written their name on it, because they want to help the business. They want to talk about, how ways to improve. And now they will come and talk to us about, hey, I think we could do this, or have we ever considered this, or have we ever tried this? And I think that that's great because it helps them really feel ownership. Everybody has digital business cards and with a QR code. And if they're at the grocery store or at, Home Depot and they see a family of four, with little kids, they can turn around and say, does your family take swimming lessons? And if not, it's a conversation starter, but they are allowed to give away a free class to that family. So they're empowered with that and they love it. It's a great marketing tool for us, but it makes them really proud to talk about Ocaquatics. And, I've had really nice stories from the partners or the spouses of our team members where they'll say, gosh, I wish every company did this. I wish my company did this because they work at a different organization. Or a restaurant was closing in the community And one of the partners of one of my staff said, if everybody thought like Ocaquatics, they might not be closing. They might have sold it to their employees. Or there's things like that. We hear that from their significant others. And then we've also had a lot of their family members start to apply for jobs now, which has been really great because they want to work for a place where they feel like they can make a difference, that cares about them as a person. And that's been super touching.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have definitely heard the feedback from folks that their employees do more like to recruit talent, that their
Mhm.
employees do more to find new customers. This
Mhm.
is the first time I'm hearing of family members wanting to join the business. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, when we were chatting earlier this fall, one of the things that you shared is that there are a lot of myths around employee ownership.
Mhm.
And I know just because you talk about this so much, you've done and have to do a lot to dispel that.
Mhm.
So I just want to walk through some of the common myths and have you respond to them.
Sure.
The first one you touched on briefly at the beginning of this conversation, but myth number one, in order to do employee ownership, you have to give the business away. You were talking to private equity before this.
Mhm.
To what extent is this true or total myth?
Total myth. I actually did 3 valuations of my company. One for the private equity transaction that I was looking at, because I didn't know what is this worth, So I did an evaluation there, and then I did a valuation with the ESOP transaction that we were looking at, and then I did a valuation with the EOT. We did really well. It was great. It was a win for the employees. It was a win for the community because the wealth stays in our area instead of to wealthy investors in another state. And it was a win for me. So I definitely, it was really great. So myth, myth,
Yeah.
myth. Yes.
Okay. All right. Here's another. Employee ownership only for big companies. Myth or truth?
Yeah, not at all. It's a myth. Now, I will say in ESOP, employee stock ownership plan, you have to be a certain size because it's just too cumbersome. It's expensive transaction. You have to do a yearly valuation to set your stock price. So yes, it has to be a larger company because you just have to, there's so much admin with it. But with an EOT, I've now talked to every size company from small to really big. So I'm really excited that there's this model that any business can fit into.
Yeah, and I would say that's one of the things that has gotten us so excited about the EOT, which is
Mhm.
really, we think employee ownership is just one of the best, unfortunately, best kept secrets. I wish it was not a best kept
Yes.
secret, but we think it's one of the best tools out there for small and mid-sized businesses. And with EOTs, all of a sudden it is more affordable and accessible for
Yes.
smaller businesses as well as the larger ones.
Mhm.
Um,
So
okay,
on
next.
that note, the EOT cost us about a quarter of what the ESOP transaction was going to be, which was
Yeah.
huge. That was significant. And also the yearly administrative fees are much less. So, that's really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, which I imagine comes back to your earlier point about simplicity of this model. It's both like
Mhm.
simplicity in communicating it to the employees, but also
Yes.
simplicity in operating it.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. There are a lot of ways in theory to finance an employee ownership transition. We have seen a lot, but one
Yes.
of the myths I've heard is that if you want to do an EOT, it has to be seller financed.
So this is an interesting one. When I was doing my transaction, I had a really hard time finding financing. And I went to my bank, who had been my banker for 100 years, or well, it felt like 100 years, and they didn't know what EOT was and they were scared of it and they were, ugh. I had a hard time finding financing. When I finally convinced them that this was okay, they were willing to give me a small portion. Now I have seen so many employee ownership funds out there. I think you are a part of one, but I think Project Equity also has one. I mean, I've seen several. That's super exciting because if I chose to do 100% seller financing, when the bank gave me the paperwork and I saw what they would give me, I thought the interest rates were quite high at that point, and I thought, if I'm gonna get this money out and put it into an investment, I'd rather just keep it in the business I know very well. So I chose to do 100% seller financing, but now I don't think I would need to do that at all because of
Yeah.
all that has changed since then. Mhm.
Yeah. And I'll speak to that too, because we've ourselves seen that change tremendously over the time that we've been running the business, which is, I think, early on, the first EOTs in the US were all 100% seller finance.
Right.
So I think that just like built as the reputation. But the
Yes.
reality is we talk to capital providers all the time. We actually have a dedicated fund ourselves at Common Trust. So there are
Mhm.
increasingly more and more options to finance this with external capital as opposed to needing to do seller financing.
Right.
So I guess I share that because for the business owners listening, I want to make sure we get across that there's a lot of customization and flexibility according to your goals. So if cash on close is important for you,
Mhm.
that's an option. If seller
Absolutely.
financing is what you would prefer, that's
Mhm.
also an option.
Mhm. So for me,
Um,
financing worked out also because I wanted to kind of extend the loan out a little bit longer. I did a longer note. This was it was something that I wanted to do, and you can design everything. But I definitely see how I could have done it very differently today. That I could have done my transaction very differently. Yep.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about governance because when I talk to business owners and we
Mhm.
explain how the trust is structured, the different roles in the trust, all of a sudden folks get pretty nervous that
Yeah.
this is really complex, a lot of extra work, and is going to be overly burdensome itself.
Uh-huh.
Tell us about governance. Is it that complex? Is it that much to operationalize?
So, earlier when I said what changed, everything changed and nothing changed. So everything changed with ownership, nothing changed with management. We are still managed the same way. We do have now a board of directors, and we have a goal to put other structures like a trust stewardship committee in place. But I didn't do that at the close. So this was one of those things that I wanted to, had I waited to do that, it would have taken me longer to close the transaction. So I know that that's one of the things that I'm working on in the next couple of years because I'd like to do that, especially as I start to step away from leadership. But for now, it's it's pretty much exactly the same as what it was 2 years ago. Now, we really did have a very transparent culture where we love information from our team members. We want them to bring ideas. They have the best ideas since they're on the front lines. So we have a pretty good system of getting their information and their ideas and helping them help us make decisions. But it's not one of the things that worried me with the worker cooperative was that it was going to be a little bit too democratic of the how those decisions would be made, and that wasn't going to be right for us. So I really like this structure because it just helped us take in the feedback, but we can still manage the same way.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your leadership role. How has that changed, if at all, since transitioning?
I am still the CEO. I was the CEO before, and I'm still here. And I feel like they are stepping into to everyone was great before, but I do feel, again, it's that ownership mindset. Everybody's really excited about this. So I'm still here. I'm still going to be here for a few more years, but I do see now is the time. I did an ownership transition, but not the leadership transition. And now I have time to work on that part of the succession of leadership. So this really helped me think through, I've been doing this almost 32 years. And what happens if something were to happen to me? I wanted to make sure ownership was taken care of. And now I can really work on that leadership transition.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, Great. And okay, one more on myths, and then I'm going to transition us. And I'll say in the next portion, we're going to start moving into Q&A probably in 5 or so minutes. So if you guys
Okay.
have questions that you want to drop them in, make sure you put them in the chat. Um, Last myth I want to hear you reflect on. A lot of folks think that in order to do this, employees have to buy in and contribute financially in order to participate. And business owners look at the value of their business and where they know their employees are at today and just say, this isn't going to work. How do
Right.
you address that?
Well, there is no buy-in, in terms of financially. They buy in with their dedication,
Yeah.
with their culture. But that was one of the things that the worker cooperative also wasn't the right fit for us because even though it was a smaller buy-in, I didn't want people to have to buy into ownership. And so the EOT, they earn their opportunity as a co-owner at Ocaquatics after they've worked 2,500 hours. We set that in the trust because we do have part-time college students who come through and everything. So once they've worked 2,500 hours, they are considered a co-owner, and there's a whole ritual around it where they get to, they get a t-shirt and they get stuff, and we do a little, just this little ceremony. but they are officially co-owners, and then they enjoy profit at the end of the year based on their compensation. It's a formula based on their dedication and their compensation. And, one of the other myths, I guess, so to speak, is so many people have asked me, when you did this transition, was it a light switch that poof, everybody started acting like an owner? And, it could be, I guess, but I think it's really important to start this culture of ownership before you do the transaction. That's where personal financial literacy was important to us, and open book management, and helping, own it to us is an acronym. And and that's the name of our culture. And it's operate with purpose, welcome growth, navigate with courage, invest in others, and transform together. And those are the things that we live by. Those 5 pillars, we try to, really live by those at Ocaquatics. And, if somebody made a mistake, it was own it, own the mistake, fix it, move on. We talked about own it all the time, so that when we finally became employee owned, everybody's like, oh, now I get why you've been doing that. So I really think for anybody who's considering going down this road, start to implement a culture of ownership, start to do things like that. Whether you become an employee owned company in the next year or so, it's still really great for your business, because when people start to think like owners, you give them the tools and resources and help them, think about what could make the business better. So it's great whether you transition or not.
Yeah. So you've kind of anticipated where I wanted to go before
Okay.
opening it up to Q&A, but
Good.
that's obviously one piece of advice you have for owners who are
Uh-huh.
transitioning. Now that you've gone through this transition process, what advice do you have for founders or owners who are just at the beginning stages?
I think research. It's good to talk to other CEOs. I spoke to a lot of CEOs of ESOP companies because I thought I was going to be an ESOP. And, the more I talked to them, the more I realized like, this is not exactly what I want. And so I would talk to other CEOs to really get their feel. And there were some really amazing EOT CEOs that I spoke to, very generous with their time. And anybody who ever wants to talk, I would love to pay it forward and talk to them as well. I also think it's really, really important. Yesterday, I was on a call with some people who were looking to become an EOT, and they were going to do the transaction with their business attorney. And I have a really amazing business attorney and an amazing accountant, but I wouldn't do this transaction with them because they do not specialize in EOTs. And they didn't even know what it was, And when they found out, they were like, yeah, we can figure this out. No, you really need a dedicated provider. And that we worked with EOT advisors. We work with Common Trust so much, and we refer people. But I think it's really, Project Equity is another great group. I think it's really important to get a dedicated advisor that knows the ins and outs of EOTs, because there are lots and lots of little things that you have to really think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that wasn't a plug.
So
I wasn't trying to like throw that in there. It really is important. It's very, very important to get someone who understands this transaction, because there are not a ton of them in the United States. But in 10 years, we're going to laugh about how many there are, because so many people now are looking at this.
yeah, definitely. Okay, so related to that, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself before starting, or what would you maybe have done differently approaching this process?
It's funny because when I was going through this process, and it was a 2-year journey, I started a document, and I'd speak to someone and write notes, and then I'd speak to someone else and write notes and write notes. And it's 50 pages long. And I was scared at the beginning, like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so huge. It's a mergers and acquisitions deal, and it's going to be complicated. And I didn't need to be that concerned about it. It really, if you have a good provider who asks you the right questions, who guides you the right way, they guide you in everything that you need to know. And I think that, I'm glad I made it through. Sometimes when I look at the early questions that I had, I think, oh my goodness, that was a long time ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. But I think that it's going to be okay. It's going to work out. It seems like a big animal, but if you break it down in steps and do it the right way, you can get through it.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I can throw one more thing in there,
Yes.
focus on the announcement to your team video it, I would say, because we videoed it, but not fantastically. We should have, I wish we had 10 more cameras there because it was such an impactful moment. And the next, start your education, like really focus on educating your team members right away. We did that. And I think that that really helped us with them, their buy-in, their engagement. And that was really important.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I feel like these are this is such an important transition, and it's such an important moment for you as an owner. It can feel uh, you get to the end of this and it's like, okay, we've done the hard part.
Yeah.
And it's just so worth putting the time and attention into this announcement, because for a lot of your employees, it's the first time they're hearing about it. So whereas you may have been thinking about this for years, it's the first time it's coming on across their radar. And I think one of the things that I've learned from watching how you have led this transition, Miren, is just the repetition and making yourself available for people to ask questions. So it's not like a one and done thing. It's actually, you will have opportunities to ask me questions about this ongoingly.
Yeah. One of our guiding principles is constant gentle pressure. It's
Mm.
a Danny Myers said that about in one of his books. And it's just we put things out there constantly, the same thing over and over and over again until it sinks in, because this is going to take a while for your team members to understand and really really get how this is going to affect their lives.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I am going to transition us to take some of the Q&A from the audience.
Sure.
I think you've actually hit on some of these in the process of just our conversation today, but here's one related to open book management, which I think is actually great because, as you said, you can do this before a transition, you can do this as part of a transition, or anywhere in between. Related to base pay and salaries and performance bonuses, are those open book with all team members? Why or why not?
So our P&Ls have everything on there except individual salaries. So we see the percentage that we're in, total that we're paying, but not individual salaries. Now, with that being said, we have a pretty transparent pay scale, where they do see, if I go to this position, I can make between this, and there are things like that. But no, the salaries are not included on a P&L breakdown.
So maybe for those who are thinking about this culturally, when you introduce that pay scale, going from kind of like no awareness to here's the pay scale, how did you roll that out?
Gradually, but it's been over time. Like, it's really taken a long time, especially because with us is every year that you come back to work, because we did have seasonal part-time team members. Every time they would come back, we did cost of living adjustments, everything was on there. We have in our team member rooms a big tree, and that's their career journey at Ocaquatics. And we tell them, as a new team member, you're a seed, we're planting you in the ground and you can grow. And this is how you can make more money. If you want to make more at Ocaquatics, go down these paths and join the leadership team. And so we talk about it. We don't want money to be a secret. We want to be out there, but we're not going to say Zoe makes this, Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a handful of questions here about training with your team. So how did you structure the training for new employees about this employee ownership structure? Another round going into detail about the Leadership Academy. And then the last one in this kind of theme of questions is the financial literacy classes. We have one person here who would like to do that for their team. Is there a particular program you recommend?
Yeah. So right now we're really loving the Khan Academy, KHAN. It is a nonprofit. So you can make donations, whatever you can afford, you can get it for free. And they really have a great program. We've also used YNAB, which is YNAB.com. It's You Need a Budget. And they have amazing videos on YouTube that you can introduce to your team. We've used Smart Dollar, which is a Ramsey product. We really, really like Smart Dollar. It just started to get more expensive. And so our team members found us some other alternatives, which was great. Our bank has programs out there. You can look at all sorts of different things. So personal financial literacy, great. The other thing, we created e-learning courses for our team members. We said 2,500 hours, they become a co-owner. But when they hit 50% of their hours, we have a big deal, and we announce it in our huddles. We have a daily huddle. So this person's at 50% of their hours. Woohoo! This person's at 75% of their hours. So we also have e-learning courses that they get to take. Congratulations, you're at 50%. this is what it means. And we start talking about the EOT more in talking about taking those financial literacy courses and what the EOT means and who our trustee is. And if we ever, and they're not even a co-owner yet, but we start talking about it with them. We do that at 50% of their hours and 75% of their hours. And then also when they become a co-owner. So that has, and it's an e-learning course, and it's an e-learning course with team members going through a skit and just recording it. It's nothing super fancy, but it just gives them more information. And then some other things, our leadership team, they're not supervisors or managers. For us, it's just people showing leadership behaviors and people that others would want to follow. So we basically put them on the team, and that way we can continue to support them on how to become a supervisor or a manager. And so we do classes like emotional intelligence, and we do all sorts of different how to communicate, having difficult conversations, and those things really help us, but we weave into it all the time about accountability and responsibility and ownership, what that means, not just in owning a piece of the company, but ownership and owning your life, owning your decisions, owning your, I messed up, let me fix it. So those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Did I answer
Nice.
that? Everything?
I think you hit all three, and I'm personally going to look at these courses on Khan Academy as well.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a bit about profit sharing. You said in the first year you wanted to set expectations carefully with your team. So you said you're getting $17, and fortunately you ended up at that 4% of payroll, which is incredible and meaningful. Of course, there's risks and expectation settings that it would go the other way. Have you run into issues with profit sharing, or how do you think about that expectation setting to make sure that there's the transparency, but also, you don't end up in a tough position there?
Yeah, no, we've been very transparent. And we have said, it looks like we have a piece of machinery out that's going to dip into this, okay, let's see how we can do it. We have really talked to them quite a bit about it. That's why when I was showing them the opportunity for, this transaction, we put a little chart that shows, our note is 12 years. So in year 12, you definitely see profit shoot up because there's no note to pay every month. But we talked about what else might get in the way, or what else we might have to be paying for at that time. We have aging buildings. We might be paying for equipment, repairs or replacements. So we definitely talk, and we talk about, we are a swimming pool. We have dehumidifiers over our pools, and a dehumidification system is $150,000. Like, we talk about that. Well, yeah, so let's take care of the equipment we have, and let's do those things. But we're pretty transparent. We're pretty open about talking about the dollars and cents of it. And that's why when the $17 it was a happy accident, that number, because they just kept saying, I don't get it. What are we going to make in the first year? I just threw that number out there. But I knew I was prepared to pull out $17 and pay everybody $17. So that worked out really well, that it ended up being more. I mean, but had it been $100, their expectation was set that there was not really going to be anything. So I would be very conservative at the beginning and say, the first year we paid for the transaction, we had to do this, we had, other expenses, and go into it conservatively. Some EOTs want to pay down that note in 5 to 7 years, or however, short term. We chose 12 years because I'm not going anywhere just yet. And I wanted to make sure there was a profit in year 1, 2, and 3, so that people could really get engaged and really excited about this.
Yeah. And how transparent were you with the note itself with your employee owners?
It's on the P&L every month. They see it.
Yeah.
And they know what they're paying me. They know how much I'm making. Yeah. And it hasn't been an issue. I think what we focus on is, can you imagine when we're not paying that down this note? Wow. What's that going to look like? Yeah.
What does it look like for employees when they retire?
I don't know. We haven't had people retire yet. I will say I have a front desk team member right now who isn't a co-owner. She's 82 years old. She doesn't want to retire. But when she retires, she will get her profit share until the last day she leaves. And then she also has her 401k and, and those things. But she's worked with us for many years. We actually have several grandparents that have come to work with us before we were co-owner, before we were employee owned. And so I do see it's really interesting because we have these older older people who love being there and love the environment. And now that they're co-owners, they're really, really, really proud of it. They talk about it and they really teach our younger team members about what this means and how lucky they are. And I think that that's been really special. But we haven't had anybody officially retire yet. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing I'll double click on that you
Yeah.
talked about that I think is important for everyone to hear is the fact that you've chosen to split the profit sharing and then contribution to the 401k.
Yes.
So it's a nice balance that both allows employees to benefit from cash now to pay for
Mhm.
important things like housing, transportation,
Sure.
childcare, what have you. And then the 401k brings a level of diversification for their retirement accounts, which is really nice, I think.
Absolutely. And with an ESOP, that was the concern, is that they were basically all of their stock, all of their investment was in Ocaquatics. And what happens if something happened to Ocaquatics? That was worrisome. So I really like the idea of the 401k. It really is a diversified portfolio. And yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have hit on most of the questions. Miren, what did I not ask today that you feel like is important for the business owners on this call to hear about the transition?
I think, just talk to people. Call me. Let me know. I don't know if you have how many people you have on the call right now, but I just think this is such an opportunity. And I hope that everybody considers it as an alternative. It's really good if you're considering selling your business, put everything on the table. And also that EOT, I hope it's an alternative there to what else they're looking at, because it's an opportunity to keep ownership local, to be part of your legacy, to really make a difference in the lives of your team members, in your community, and just to really to make a really great impact in all of those lives. So I am here if anybody ever wants to talk or has any more questions for me. I love, this is like my favorite topic, and I want to be a messenger about employee ownership.
Yes, and you are a fantastic spokesperson for employee ownership, and just sharing how it worked for you and how it's worked for your company. Well, I think we'll wrap up here then. Miren, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story, and thanks to everyone for coming. As Miren kindly offered, if you want to talk to her, you can reach out to her. Maybe we can you can
Yes.
reach out to us at Common Trust and we can connect you with Miren, or otherwise, at Common Trust, we are really dedicated to making employee ownership more accessible and affordable to businesses across the country. So if you're exploring, we're also happy to chat with you. And part of the session is really making this more accessible by allowing you to hear from business owners themselves. We think it's so important to hear from the folks who are walking the walk on employee ownership and have learned the lessons themselves about how to do this well and what they might do differently. So thank you for everyone for joining us. Thank you, Miren, for sharing your story.
Great. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.